And I get to the airport and I walk into the lounge. This is back when in the lounge at the airport, everyone would have a newspaper. Doesn't happen anymore, but this is 7 years ago, right? And I walk in and on the front page of the Herald Sun, in the biggest font to this day I've ever seen on the front page of the Herald Sun, said the word axed with my head on the front page. And people are holding the Herald Sun up, reading it everywhere, right? So I walk in the morning, everyone's reading the Herald Sun, I'm just seeing my head axed, 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 axed. And then I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Got one of the funniest men in Australia, if not probably global comedian as well. We've got the great Lehmo with us. Lehmo, welcome, mate.
Hello.
Yes.
It's lovely to be with you. I have no idea what to expect. Professionally, I'm a research guy, right?
Yep.
Like if I've got something coming up or a gig,
Prepared.
I do loads of research. If I'm doing a podcast, I'll listen to the pod normally. And this time, for some reason, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to go in cold, and I'm excited about sitting down and having no idea what's coming my way. So I'm a little energised right now.
I like that.
Well, let's hope you don't regret that in an hour's
Thinking
time.
about-
But good news is we're pretty much the same. We do our research on the guests, but as you can see, we have zero notes.
Yes.
We like to kind of let it flow and see where it goes. We've got the screen behind us that kind of might pull some vintage Lehmo out as we go.
Oh,
but
yeah, great.
We were just talking about the podcast landscape off air, and I find it
Yes.
really interesting. When you were starting, how did you get your big break? Because it's a different era. Without sounding like it was in the dinosaur age. It wasn't that long ago.
Well, I got on my penny farthing and I rode down to the local chuckle hut. And I begged my good man for a bag of flour to put me on. You know what? And this is, I'll tell you about a couple of breaks of mine, right? And it's all just... I have never planned anything, right? Colin Hay once said, and I quoted Colin Hay. I've got the start of my book, right?
Okay.
And Colin Hay said, "I've never had a plan. I've just followed the path that's fallen in front of me," and that's me, as well, right? So my first ever gig in stand-up, I'd never planned to be a stand-up comedian ever. I liked watching it, right? And I liked telling jokes, right? And I guess I was kind of funny, maybe. But I used to go to a comedy club with a mate of mine. In fact, funny enough, I just got off the phone to him. I was talking to him on the way here. And this is in 1993. We used to go to this comedy club and add back. Can you guys, do you have calendars that go back that far? Have you ever
we weren't
Googled
quite bored yet.
1993?
2 years later, we were welcomed into the wide world. Yeah.
Right. So it was in 1993. We used to go to this comedy club in Adelaide at this place called Bolt's Cafe, which is no longer there, on Rundle Street in Adelaide. And we used to love the Thursday night comedy show. We'd go every week. And on about a fourth or fifth week in a row, my mate, who I just spoke to, his name's Anthony Pope, his sister is Anne-Marie. Without me realising it, Anne-Marie went up to the MC and said, "Hey, you mentioned open mic spots. I'm going to put down a mate's name." And she put my name down to perform the next week.
Oh, wow.
Right? And all these people are still friends of mine. The MC is a guy called Charlie Hill-Smith who lives in Fitzroy, near me, and we're still really good mates. And so she came up to me and she goes, "I put your name down for next week, you're on." And I was like, what the fuck? So I was like, okay. So I went away and wrote a 5-minute routine and I did it and it killed, which is rare for your first one, but it did. And I was hooked.
How many people are in the room, like in that?
So that used to be full every week, which I think the capacity was maybe 120. So let's say
big crowd.
It says 100 people there.
Yeah.
And it was a really cool room. It was a great comedy venue. So I did that. So my first foray ever into stand-up is I didn't seek it out. Someone else poured me into it, right? Then I do stand-up for years, and then big break number 2 comes along. Had been overseas. I'd been living in London. I come home to Adelaide, and Marty Sheargold was doing a breakfast show on SAFM in Adelaide. So I catch up with him. And he goes, "I'm doing a comedy show tonight for the radio station. You should come down and have a look." I said, "Yeah, sure." So I turn up, watch Shigs perform. I'm having a couple of beers with him backstage afterwards. And then this woman walks in backstage and I'm like, "Oh my God, it's Karen, who I was dated in year 11, right?
Good old Karen.
I'm like, oh my God. And so we catch up, right? I said, what are you doing now? She was married to the program director at SAFM, right? That night, they're driving home in the car, and he says to her, Marty Sheargold's leaving. He's got a gig back in Melbourne. Now I've got to find someone else to host this fucking show in Adelaide. Who am I going to get? And she goes, hey, I saw Lehmo there tonight. He's a good guy. You should get him for the show. And he went, what is... And then he asked Marty Sheargold about me, and then he rang me and offered me the job.
Wow.
I'd never considered getting into radio, ever. It wasn't even on my radar at all.
So...
And then that just... So those two stories... kind of good examples of how I just got lucky, I guess.
Well, things don't even go the way you planned. Like you didn't plan to do stand-up. Someone else put you on for you.
Yeah, that's right. And radio, I'd never thought. I mean, that radio story is so annoying for like so many people who go to radio school and all that shit and work in Mount Isa for 4 fucking years. Hoping
That's so true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I just waltz into that, not even looking for it.
In your hometown, or in Adelaide,
Hey, you want a breakfast radio job? So that was the start of my... although I had done radio prior to that on a community radio station called Fresh FM, which was a dance music radio station. I'd done bits and pieces with them. But that was my first proper radio gig.
Yeah, because and it's interesting. We had Lawrence Mooney in here how long ago? A couple of months ago, and it was interesting to kind of hear his story and how it all kind of evolved for him. But what was your kind of plan prior to all that? You said you didn't even consider stand-up comedy. You fell into radio.
So I was an accountant.
Okay.
So I left school. I went to uni and studied accounting. And I just did accounting because my dad, and I'm not even making this up. My dad's accountant had a good car.
Right.
And my dad goes, seriously, while I was thinking about what I was going to do, he goes, well, I think his name was Les, the accountant. He goes, Les has got a bloody nice car, son. You might want to think about accounting.
That's why they didn't drive to Alberton. Yeah, that's why they carpooled.
So I went, oh, all right. I don't know. My indecisiveness is another defining feature of my life. So I went, oh, okay. So I put accounting down, and I studied accounting, and then I was working as an accountant.
Right.
Yeah. So I was just going to be an accountant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have, like two of my best mates who I studied with, who are brothers, they have an accounting firm in Adelaide, and they are my accountants now, and still really good friends of mine. So I guess I'd be doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
You mentioned
to some degree.
You mentioned about the... You said you got lucky, and there's other people that are working their ass off and try to build up that experience and the repertoire to get on radio, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is there a bit of like healthy competitiveness in the comedy sector around, or is there jealousy at all around? Oh, that person's got a big break, or that person's got that spot. I'd love that spot. Did you ever?
So are you asking me if a group of people with extremely fragile egos are getting jealous of other people who are getting gigs that they are desperate to get? There couldn't be more jealousy in that. Really? It's very rare in the comedy community. And if comedians are going to be really honest with themselves, it's very rare you feel genuine happiness for someone who gets a gig.
There you go. Yeah.
Because often you'll think to yourself, fuck. There's a funny line that people say, which is, how did you get that? So someone will say, so the joke is to go, oh, how'd you get that?
Right? You sleep with?
Yeah. So, people are jealous all the time. It's not, as I've gotten older, more often I feel genuinely happy for people when they get certain gigs. Yeah. But certainly I went through a period where I would be like, fuck. How'd they get that? Why'd they get that job? Yeah. And that's, everyone would be the same. Yeah. Without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt. But now I don't care as much now.
Because you're kicking goals.
Yeah, it's like, I'm pretty grateful. It's been a pretty good career.
Yeah. Have you experienced lean times throughout? And if so, what are they like when you're looking for the next gig, whether it's TV, radio, stand-up? How do you get through those? if you've been involved in them.
Yeah. Well, I've kind of just had a lean period, really.
Yeah.
So look, turning point when I reflect on it was probably getting sacked. Well, the whole Footy Show getting axed.
That's right.
So I was hosting the revamped Footy Show. I think we did 6 episodes, and then it got boned. After 25 years, I hosted the last 6 episodes. and so we get... It was fun. It's a funny story, right? So we finished episode number 6.
Who was on that again? But it was
Fev. Me going down the panel. It was me, Nerily Meadows, Dylan Alcott,
That's right.
Brendan Favola, Shane Crawford.
Oh, Sam wasn't there. Sam.
Too many people.
Yeah.
And it was and it looked exactly like the old Footy Show. So a lot of people were like, where's Sam?
Yeah.
Which is a reasonable thing to think if you've been watching it for 25 years.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, why's Lehmo there?
Yeah.
With a chick. It's weird. And a dude in a wheelchair. What? What's happened to the Footy Show?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So
It's a shock.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So we lasted 6 episodes, right?
6 apps.
Got boned, and the night we finish episode number 6, we walk to the backstage area to where all our green rooms are, and I see the top programming executive from Channel 9. And I'm like, I was standing next to Fev. I said, how good's this? He's come down to check it, because we had a really good show that night. I said, how good he's flown down to check out the show. And Fev looks at me and goes, mate, we're about to get boned. Oh. And I was like, fuck. Like Fev, it was obvious to Fev. And to me, I was like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Anyway, we all go into what was my green room, and then he sacks us. So the next morning, so we had a couple of beers afterwards together there, and I went home, told the missus, went to bed. Next morning, I did a radio interview on 3AW. Ross Stevenson's a good mate of mine. And I did a radio interview on Triple M with Eddie and Luke Darcy, because I was a regular on that show. Luke Darcy introduced me by saying, the Footy Show's been one of the most successful shows on Australian television for the last 25 years, but the man who's driven it into the ground is our next guest.
Yeah.
So safe to say, he wasn't overly sympathetic. And so that was a fun interview with them. And then I had to fly to Adelaide for a gig, right? And I went, right, that's it. I'm turning my phone off. I don't want to speak to anyone else. I'm just going to go to the airport and just forget about it and go to Adelaide, have a fun gig, and, you know, it'll all be done. And I get to the airport and I walk into the lounge. This is back when in the lounge at the airport, everyone would have a newspaper. Doesn't happen anymore, but this is 7 years ago, right? And I walk in, and on the front page of the Herald Sun, in the biggest font to this day I've ever seen on the front page of the Herald Sun, said the word axed with my head on the front page. And people are holding the Herald Sun up, reading it everywhere, right? So I walk in the morning, everyone's reading the Herald Sun, I'm just seeing my head axed. And then I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. Great. So that was that. So I got boned from the Footy Show, and I was pretty... and I was very gracious with how I handled it, because, really for me, I lost a job I'd had for 6 weeks. But I felt sorry for the crew. A lot of those guys had worked there for 25 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was so for them, it was genuinely a shock to their lives, having 25-year gig all of a sudden ends. So I was pretty gracious about it all, and I thought to myself, oh, this shouldn't affect me too much. But on reflection, I think it did, because TV work for me really dried up after that, because I'd finished up on the project the year before. I got boned from radio. Well, I got sacked from Gold 104.3, and I lost half my job from the project on the same day.
Right.
So I found out in the morning I'd been boned from radio.
I don't think we've had anyone on the show say the word boned more than 10 times
Yeah.
in one go.
Yeah, so And then the project I was on every Friday, and then they reduced it to every second Friday.
Yep.
Right? To accommodate Lisa Wilkinson coming onto the show. So that I found out about both of those things in the same day, and then the Footy Show was, the next year, and then after that, I just couldn't. It was hard to get a radio or TV work after that.
Yeah.
I think there was a bit of a stink on me, I think.
Really? Yeah.
At the time. So I was really just doing gigs, and I sort of put a lot of energy into doing corporate comedy, and that was fine for me. That was kind of working out.
Yep.
But yeah, the other stuff really dried. And I'd ring my manager and go, anything? And I could tell in the end, this may not be true, and this might be unfair, but in my head, what was happening is I'd ring my manager, she'd look at her phone, see my name and go, oh, for fuck's sake. Take a deep breath and then answer and go, yes. And I would go, anything? Have I got anything?
Wow, yeah.
So I had a period of probably 3 years, which was through COVID as well, which was possibly fortuitous that COVID happened because, where there wasn't much going on. But then during COVID as well, just as luck would have it, I got a radio gig in Adelaide, which I could do from Melbourne. So I was doing breakfast radio again at my original radio station in Adelaide.
Yeah.
So that kind of came along, but then I was still struggling to get my head on TV or get any interest on anything.
Yep.
But then, I kind of stopped caring, and then it was funny. Then things started coming back to me again.
This very funny episode of the dos&d show with the fantastic Lehmo is brought to you by our good friends at Fleet Plan Hire Solutions.
Are you loving this episode?
Oh, Dos, I'm loving it.
Well, you know what I love even more?
What's that?
I love the guys at Fleet Plan Hire Solutions.
Yes, please.
They're the best in the business when it comes to your earth moving needs. Head to fbh.com.au to find out more.
Back to the episode with Lehmo.
Got to roll back, because how did probably our favourite footy show of all time was Before the Game.
Oh, yeah.
So, how did that come about? Because I'm trying to think of, you're mentioning the radio opportunities. Was Before the Game around the same time?
So I got that radio gig, right? My first show was the 1st of July, 2003. Is when I started that radio gig. In August 2003, I was a guest on The Glass House, if you can remember that show. It was a show on the ABC hosted by Will Anderson with Hughesy and Corinne Grant as kind of the panellists, and they would have guests come on each week. So I did an episode of The Glass House, and then I was backstage, and someone who worked on Before the Game said to me, hey, are you into footy?
Yeah.
I said, I fucking love footy. I live for it.
Start it.
And they go, oh, really? And they just said, oh, right, okay. And that was it. That was the end of that conversation. And then a week later, I got a phone call saying, hey, do you want to come and fill in? Because Damien Callanan, who was on the show at the time, was going to be away for 3 weeks. Do you want to come and fill in for 3 weeks? I said, yeah, sure. So I went and filled in for 3 weeks in a row. And then I did a cross for their grand final show. And then it just worked out that the next year they had a spot on the desk, and then so that's how I got that job.
Because everybody there, for us, we look at them all as legends. And now, obviously, Hughesy, yourself, Mick Malloy came in a bit later, but...
Hellier.
Yeah,
Hellier,
Peter.
Sam Lane.
Yeah.
Was that a big launching pad for those guys, all those people as a group? Or were you already, because, we're a bit younger, but were you guys already fairly well established?
It was definitely... For me, it was, absolutely, because it meant I was on television regularly for the first time ever.
Yep.
So it definitely was for me. Hughesy all kind of been a star from day one.
Yep.
Hughesy was started doing stand-up and then was almost immediately was this
TV. Yeah.
Was this a star, you know? He just had this meteoric, immediate rise, and he's just stayed there ever since. So I don't think it was... it was obviously great for him.
Yeah.
But Hughesy his profile was huge anyway. Hellier was a regular on Rove.
Yep.
So he was kind of well-known.
Was Rove Channel 10 too back then?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So he was well-known anyway. But for me and Sam Lane and Andy Marr,
Oh, yeah, Andy.
well, initially Anthony Hudson,
Yes. Yep.
and then Andy Marr. For us three, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Are you like, and in those days, like, because you see a lot of these guys, and I know you've done work. Obviously, we're talking. There's a nice photo there, but we've talked about obviously the Footy
yeah.
Show's 9. This is 10. You talked about the ABC. Do you have to sign contracts with these networks that you can't, like when you're on before the game, that you can't hop across to do a cameo on ABC or somewhere else, or is it?
Yeah, right. I've never signed one of those contracts.
Yeah.
But you absolutely can.
Yeah. So they don't really care though if you haven't signed it. If you.
So, for example, I'm trying to think of like, so let's say Chris Brown, right? He's moved from Channel 10 to Channel 7. Mm-hmm. He won't bob up anywhere else. Yeah. He'll just be on Channel 7 because he's got a network contract.
Yep.
Whereas, let's say a Tom Gleeson, so Gleeson has Hard Quiz on the ABC, but Taskmaster on Channel 10.
Yeah. Yep.
Or you'll have Sam Pang, who does Front Bar on Channel 7, and he does Have You Been Paying Attention on Channel 10.
Yep.
So there is lots of cross-pollination.
Sure.
You know.
Because Danny was saying off air before you arrived, someone he knew went to a show, sat in the live audience, and it was like almost like a quiz type show.
Oh, yeah.
And
doesn't
don't want to
mention
say
it.
the show. But every person that got up said, "So what network am I on again?" Like,
What are we on tonight? Yeah. Because I didn't know.
just
but
a rotating roster.
like,
you know?
and even just to go and do, when you do a cameo or you go into these shows, let's say it's a, have you been paying attention? Something like that where you might not be a regular, but you might jump on. Are they normally like a well-paid gig, or sometimes do people do it just for exposure? And like, how does that kind of work?
You would do, well, look, don't tell the working dog guys this, but I would do Have You Been Paying Attention for nothing,
Yep.
Yeah.
right? Because it's fun,
Yep.
for starters, and it's great for profile.
Yep.
I mean, that show,
How long's that been going now? It's a great show.
10 years just
Yeah.
about, yeah. So that show is, really, pushes your profile in a big way. And people who watch Have You Been Paying Attention are ticket buyers as well.
Yes.
So they'll go and, they'll go and see your live shows.
Yep.
Wherever they are, yeah. Same as the Taskmaster audience buys tickets as well. Not that I've been on Taskmaster, but having spoken to Nina Ayama, who was on it, it was really good for her. Taskmaster was good for her ticket sales.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can we get that clip up of? So before we move on from before the game, there's a ripping clip that
We probably breezed over how much we loved.
oh,
before
like
the
that,
game.
that to me was iconic days of like just footy, right? Saturday,
Yeah.
Leads into the footy.
Saturday you've played, you've hung out with your mates, you've gone to the local footy, and then Saturday night you come home, mum's made dinner before the game's on.
Oh.
Channel 10, 5-minute warning, and then
Yeah.
This was a show.
It was-
Funny enough, my dad was obsessed with this show. We never missed it. This was like our bonding show. Was before the game.
It was.
love
I
you,
see.
son.
I love that. And I hear a lot of people say that it was in a sweet spot too. Like it kind of took over from Hey Hey It's Saturday.
Yeah, true.
As that Saturday night before you go out show, and it was also when the afternoon game would finish, and we'd have an hour.
Yep.
Before the evening game started. Whereas now, when Twilight Footy started, it kind of
Yeah.
stuffed it a little bit.
Yeah.
well, you'd lose a lot of viewers, wouldn't you? 'Cause
Yeah,
they'd
yeah,
go and watch
they'd
the
go
footy
over
rather
to
than
the
watch
footy,
the show.
yeah.
So do you remember before we click play? Do you remember this? What we were
Yeah, I
about to
do.
watch?
So this was this was a promo for Booper. So Hughesy and I got strapped up to heart monitors, and we watched in at Channel 10. They set up like a lounge room type situation, and we watched a Hawthorn-Carlton game, and it ended up just being perfect because Hawthorn won off the back of a really bad umpiring decision. Like
We just had Razor Ray walk out, and we've just been talking about this.
yeah, you couldn't script it better.
Yeah.
It was just perfect. And Hughesy is not famous for containing his emotions when he watches.
Yeah, quick playback.
Here we go. Let's have a look at this.
Be hard not to spare.
Look at Hughesy's heart rate.
His heart rate's gone to 140. Look at you, leaning back, arms on the couch, just wrapped with the decision.
We're
Oh, that's funny. That's better than Gogglebot.
And
isn't it?
you know the funny thing about that is Clarko was also the same game was wearing a monitor as part of
Oh,
this
really? Yeah.
Booper. There was a big Booper thing that was happening that week.
Big boob
And
thing.
Clarko's heart rate during that same game, which was a
no.
really tight game, maxed out, I think, at 92 beats per minute or something.
Hughesy's got to 140.
Hughesy
then.
got to 140. I
You're in
think
the
I
one-
got to 127 or
Oh,
something.
wow. Yeah.
But yeah, it was really good fun. I mean, I think I've pitched it as a TV show idea, but it's just never got legs. But I think for Fox Footy, you know, one of those things, you know, they did press red for Ed for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
You press as an option, as a commentary option, you have, say, Hughesy and I
Watching it.
calling a Hawthorn Carlton
See,
game.
that would be good. Yeah.
That's
That'd be
actually,
great.
it's a big thing over in probably more Europe or the UK with soccer.
They do it in the Premier League, don't
Yeah.
they?
So a lot of people will like live stream themselves, and they're like these big YouTubers that have obviously these huge audiences. But there'll be 5 guys sitting around. We actually listened and used to watch them. But there'll be 5 guys. They all go for a different Premier League team, and they'll all just, you know. But there's more that happens in a soccer game. Like if there's a goal, that's a big deal. Whereas in footy, it's probably more like, you know, there's a lot of gaps you need to fill. That's with nothing really. Like,
Just a lot of yelling and carrying on.
Do you have any, when you look back, do you have any like skits or any moments from before the game that stick out in your memory as...
Do I have?
Like, is there a particular show or a particular night or particular guest?
I used to always like Fitzy when we crossed the Fitzy.
Who was the North guy that came in, the defender, who just... Grimer?
Nathan Grimer.
Yeah, and he
Was that
just
his
like...
name? Not Grimer.
And he was just so funny that he just went from being this defender to suddenly North was just pushing, like...
There were a few people like that. David Wirapunda was like that as well.
Yeah.
He came on and was freaking hilarious. And I remember Dean Cox was really funny as well. And, you know, Cameron Ling and, what's Lingy's best mate down at Geelong? I've just had a bloody mental blank. But they were both really great characters on the show as well.
Yeah.
And I remember, one thing I really remember, because they keep replaying it, is we crossed to David Zaharakis after he kicked that winning goal in the Anzac game. Because that was a Saturday afternoon game.
Yeah,
that particular Anzac day. But I don't know. I used to like the inside 60s were great.
Oh,
Yeah, they were good.
You know.
Inside 60. Yeah. And, like I said, I used to love the crosses to Fitzy with the special guests.
Oh, they were
you
good.
know, like...
Yeah. And Tool of the Week was always
great.
good. I did a thing with Neil Baum recently, who won Tool of the Year.
Did he? What did he do?
See if you can find
It
this.
was freaking hilarious.
You'll find it,
You
Connor.
might even be able to find it.
Yeah, Connor will find it.
There. But Gary Ablett's being interviewed in the Geelong change rooms.
You remembered it.
Yeah, I do.
You remember it? Yes. Gary
Like Neil
Ablett's being
Baum.
interviewed in the Geelong change rooms, and right behind him is the toilet door. And halfway through the interview, Neil Baum walks out of the toilet and just does a huge exhale while he sort of pulls his pants up. Just does that. Whew, like he's just done the biggest shit in the history of the world.
One of these ones.
And I was did a thing with Neil Baum a couple of weeks ago, and I brought it up. And he goes to me, it was actually a wee, Lehmo. I had a wee.
I promise I didn't leave kids.
Oh, that was so funny.
That is hilarious.
But he wanted barbecue for that. Did he? There was a giant barbecue was the prize for Tool of the Year.
What was your favourite before the game memory? growing up?
I had this weird one. It's when Fitzy, I think it was when Freo, it might have been, what year did it finish up? Was it 2013?
2013 was our last year.
So it might have been the last ever show. So I think it was it was when Freo played in the granny against Hawthorn. So that was 2013,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
I don't know why this sticks out, but it was Fitzy dressed as, he was in this purple lycra from head to toe.
Yeah.
And I think he was going around Melbourne.
Phantom or something.
Yeah, the Phantom. And he was going around Melbourne with Freo supporters, like in these random pubs all over the place. But again, it's just the way, it just crossed to him and the way he acted it. He just looked so depressed. And it was like, it was zoomed in at his eyes and then the camera pans away and it just slowly reveals. And he's like, this is what I'm doing with my life now.
Yeah,
like, But have you found it?
It was
Got any
great.
chance?
Oh, wow.
That's where I remember there was a great one with Fitzy where he was unveiling a statue down at the G.
Yeah.
And it was they pulled the cloak off, and it was actual Kevin Bartlett standing there pretending to handball.
Well, that's a good question. Like, how much do you guys, as a talent that show, do you put into actually, like producing it in some way, or writing and coming up with that kind of material?
So I mean, the show has writers,
Yeah, of course.
and producers, obviously. So they would have the writers and producers would have meetings early in the week where they'd sort of, think about ideas, or if you had an idea, you can send it through.
Yep.
And then you'd have your big Thursday meeting where you'd talk through all of those ideas.
Yep.
And then they'd go off and film stuff on the Friday, and then it'd all be good to go for the show Saturday.
Yeah.
So you would have a bit of input, but really, it's the writers and producers that probably deserve most of the credit.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
So talking a bit more about maybe your stand-up now, how have you found it all? I mean, you've now been doing it for a number of years. The landscape shifts, the world's changed, a lot more political correctness and things like that. How have you found your own personal stand-up change or evolve, or is it...
To be completely honest with you, I've noticed hardly any...
Okay.
I haven't hardly ever had a moment in the last 5 years where I've written a joke and then gone, oh, God, won't be able to say that.
Yep.
Bloody woke bullshit.
Yep.
I just honestly haven't.
Yep.
I think because maybe I've just evolved with the times. Invariably when people complain about, comedy's dead, it's a comedian from the 1980s who hasn't performed since.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's very true.
And people go, oh, comedy's dead. To which I say, there's never been more comedians on radio. Mm-hmm. There's never been more comedians on TV. There's never been... The comedy festival this year was the biggest ever.
Yeah.
Adelaide Fringe is the biggest ever. There are comedy festivals in Brisbane, Sydney, Hobart, Perth, Darwin. They're fucking everywhere. Byron Bay has a comedy festival. The Sunshine Coast has a comedy festival.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like Mount Isa will have one before
Yeah.
long. Touring's never been better. Like there are constantly... tours, American comedians come to Australia and sell out. You don't even know they're here.
Yeah.
Because they sell out through their podcasts. Comedy's never been bigger.
What about then with like the TikTok comedian style, that really short grab? Has that?
Yes.
Have you seen that change the industry at all too, or like the crowd's expecting something different, whether it is crowd work or it is, I don't know, a more condensed show? I have no idea.
I don't really know what crowds expect. I think they just want to laugh, and they don't care where it comes from. But I feel the biggest change for me when I started doing stand-up, and for the first 20 years of my stand-up career, you would turn up to a club, do a gig, and then leave.
Yep.
And that was it. It was done, and it was just a memory. But now I feel sorry for young comics now. They're all carrying fucking cameras to gigs. They're setting them up. They're filming everything. They're praying for a viral moment. They're going home. They're fucking editing. They're putting it up on their site. I'm like, Jesus Christ. The whole reason we did this is because we don't have to if you want to be in a band and carry shit around, then do that.
Yeah.
The joy of stand-up is it's just you. You turn up, microphone, bang, there's the jokes, gone. And I love the idea of moments just being contained in a club, and it's just whatever happens that night just belongs in that night.
Yeah.
But now everything's filmed, and people are desperate for that moment, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I understand it. So that's the way of the world, and it works. Like comics who have a strong Insta or TikTok game sell more tickets, so it works. But I'm glad I'm through the other side of it now, where I don't have to stress about that shit.
Yeah.
But I honestly feel so sorry for comics.
You're right. Like
lugging shit around and get home into an edit. You know, you should be getting home and I don't know,
putting the telly on,
munching on a gummy or something. But they're in an edit suite at home, going, well, "Am I going to go fucking viral?"
Oh, yeah. It's probably also just because the pressure that is now on people that do somewhat any type of entertainment and content online. Like you now have the expectation of I've got Like, how many followers would you have, Lehmo, on your socials? Do you reckon?
Look, I don't play a very strong social media game. I've got about 25,000,
Yeah,
I
that's
think, on
solid,
Insta.
right?
The biggest appeal on my Instagram is my son. At the
Oh,
moment.
actually,
Yeah.
I was going to bring him up. No, it's perfect. It's a great segue. I was actually showing the boys because I remember watching it. It would have been months ago now, but that viral joke. Was it on the cruise?
It was on a comedy
That was
cruise.
unbelievable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was pretty
And,
cool.
and Sharon Osbourne commented.
Sharon
Sharon Stone, sorry, not Sharon Osbourne.
Two very different people.
It's a different movie, the Sharon Osbourne
yeah,
one. Yeah.
very different movie.
Yeah, it blew right up. He's a funny kid.
It's
Yeah.
had 2.5 million views.
Wow.
And yeah, Sharon Stone commented on it, which is crazy. It's my childhood crushing on my child. It's a weird situation to be in. John Stamos liked it. It's very... And now, in 2 weeks, we're going on a P&O cruise, another one, and he's going to be my warm-up act. So he's now...
No way.
Oh, wow.
So he's got a tight 5.
Tied 5. Come on, son.
Yeah. And he's going to be my warm-up act
That's amazing.
on the cruise. Which
We're
will be
also
cool.
having a look too, and like some of the cool people you get to work with and encounter. And we're looking at the John Cleese roast. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
So was he? Maybe you can talk about some of your influences in comedy too, as a teenager or a child growing up. But what did that mean to meet him? And
Yeah, it was pretty cool because one of my favourite memories as a kid, 2 of my favourite memories, is we used watching Footy Towers at home with mum and dad, and watching my dad just fucking piss himself laughing, like laugh so hard at Footy Towers, and it was just so stupid and so funny. So that's a great memory of mine. And one of the first times, it may have been the first time I ever went to the cinema. I can't remember exactly. But my dad took me to not the cinema, the drive-in in Loxton in country South Australia to see Life of Brian.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that was a nice bonding thing for
Yeah.
me and my dad, And I remember it being, the movie being, it was a bit like probably not appropriate for a 9-year-old or whatever I was at the time, 10-year-old. But I have a really strong memory of that. And then, so that's stuff with my dad and my family. Then when I was at uni, me and my mates were obsessed with Life of Brian, Holy Grail, and Meaning of Life.
Yes.
So we were those annoying
Oh, you were quoting it all the
who
time.
learn every line to every movie, and we'd quote them all the time. Some nights at parties, we would just spend hours going over
Just
and over.
communicating through quote. Yeah.
Just, 100%. It must have been so fucking tedious for everyone else, right? So he was a big part of my childhood, a big part of my university years. And then A Fish Called Wanda was just one of the great comedy films of all time. So I felt like he's been a part of my life for a long time.
Yeah.
So to do the roast was really cool.
Yeah. What was he like as a bloke?
He was lovely.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
Took it on the chin?
Yeah, he was great. He understood what the whole thing was. So he played along beautifully. And he's cricket obsessed. And when we were filming it, a test match was on at the time in England with the time difference. So he kept, every time we had a break, he'd pull his phone out straight away. And we'd had a bit of a chat about cricket just before we got introduced. So every time he'd pull his phone out, if there'd been a wicket, because we were batting at the time while we were filming, and he'd look at me and go, Kawaja, out. And run his thumb across his throat. So that was kind of nice.
good.
That's awesome.
Oh, well,
And he's obsessed with jokes as well. So afterwards, we were chatting to him, and he was like really into joke structure, positioning of words, and use of, like just obsessed with comedy and jokes. It was nice. Yeah.
what like in terms of there's quite a big difference between like British comedy and American comedy and probably Australian comedy. What
English as well?
Yeah.
English comedy? Did you already say
Yeah.
English? Oh, fuck.
British. Where do you?
Fucking idiot.
In terms of again going back to influence and probably enjoyment. Where do you kind of sit? What's your kind of favorite category? I suppose as a viewer, not a performer.
Traditionally the English comedy, which I still love. I mean, The Office was great, obviously.
It's our favorite.
Yeah, it's gold.
Yeah, and the American Office is great too. I interviewed. Oh God, I'm getting old.
Don't say Ricky.
Don't
Gervais.
say Steve Carell. Not
No. What's Ricky Gervais's?
Stephen
David
Merchant?
Brent.
No.
No, what's his his writing partner?
Oh, Stephen
Stephen
Merchant.
Merchant.
Steve Merchant. I interviewed
Oh,
Steve Merchant.
Jealous.
When they'd just taken the office over to the US.
Oh, right.
And he said it was really funny because there's 12 episodes of The Office, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
maybe
there's only
13
12.
with the Christmas
Yeah,
episode.
that's
So
right,
maybe there's
Christmas.
13. And he said they were having meetings in America, and the Americans are like, "So how many episodes did you make of this?" And Steve Merchant goes, "This is 13." And they'd be like, "Oh my God, that is so adorable." 13. So cute, these guys. 13.
Half a season.
And he
Yeah.
goes, as they're getting ready to punch out, I don't know, fucking 200 episodes.
Yeah.
Or however many there are.
They Americanised it, but it's
of
a
The
great
Office.
show.
But the American Office is really funny.
Hilarious.
Really funny. So I'm trying to think of other
Do you ever
British
watch
shows.
Alan Partridge?
Mate, Alan Partridge I love.
Yeah.
Mid-Morning Matters.
Oh,
is a
yes. So good.
Yeah.
great show. I love The Trip
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the movie, The
with
Trip.
Coogan
yeah.
and...
Yep.
Or the TV series with Coogan and Rob Brydon.
I think there's a movie
That
too.
They
Yeah.
did do a
They
movie
put it- yeah,
eventually,
yeah.
but that initial TV series, just so fucking funny.
Have you ever met Steve Coogan or come across any of those?
Steve Coogan. I've definitely interviewed Rob Brydon.
Oh, yep.
Steve Coogan, have I interviewed him? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't have a great memory for these things.
You'd remember that, I
Yeah.
reckon. Yeah.
I was doing a quick radio interview with Will Ferrell before he was on the project one night, right? So I walk into the green room and he's with Pete Hellier. Pete goes, "Oh, Lehmo, this is Will. Will, this is Lehmo." And Will Ferrell goes, "Oh, we've met before, haven't we?" And I was like, "No." He goes, "Are you sure? You sound really familiar." And I said, "I think I'd remember if I'd met Will Ferrell."
Yeah.
And he goes, "All right, fair enough." Yeah. So I do this radio interview with him, give him a Hawthorn jumper, take a photo of it, which I'm sure just was left in a bin on his way out of the building. Anyway, and I do this interview with him. Then he goes on to the project desk to do an interview on the project desk. And then another mate of mine, Justin Hamilton, was there as well. And Hamo goes to me, "You do realise you've met him before?" And I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, you interviewed him for Blades of Glory."
Oh,
I was like,
great
"Fuck,
movie.
that's right, I did too."
One of the great movies too.
I was like, "Jesus, fuck." I've got a shit memory though.
Well, give us your favourite, who's your favourite character? Is it David Brent? Is it Basil Fawlty? Is it Strawny? Who's the
My
greatest
favourite
comedy
character. The Coogan. Alan Partridge, I think, is really hard to go past.
Yeah.
God.
It's
Just-
he's
just
just
so
such
many
a
layers.
fucking loser.
That's the
You know.
description. Like, just such a loser.
It's just such a brilliant character.
It's so good.
And the way he, like having worked in radio, Mid-Morning Matters
It's
to
so
me
funny.
is just so good. And there's one, and this is a great thing. Like radio people always really laugh at this, but to me, it's just so fucking funny when he goes on Mid-Morning Matters. He goes, "Well, the program director thought our phone topic yesterday was a bit narrow. So we're broadening it out today. Give us a call," and he says the number. "Give us a call. What is the greatest thing of all?"
You always point that.
It's like, it's just so
Someone
perfect.
brings and goes sliced bread.
It's just, and he goes, match an English monarch to the car they would have driven.
Yeah. And he falls
King
in love
Henry
with that
VIII,
bloke.
Range Rover, absolutely, yes, yes.
What did you say? The sliced bread? Does someone call and say?
Someone says sliced bread and he doesn't agree. Yeah.
The greatest thing of all, yes.
And there's one where he's getting massaged and he says, "You're now listening to a mid-morning massage," and he's literally being massaged and he falls asleep. So good.
I
So
think
good.
it's time for our Watching the Golf Box
Oh, yes.
segment.
Connor, can you bring that
do you
over,
mind bringing
please?
over the Golf Box? So basically, Lehmo,
Sure.
the Golf Box, brought to you by our good friends at Golf Box. There's a few questions, quirky, curly
Okay.
questions and challenges.
Yep.
And if you're open, you'll put your hand in there, pull one out, and if you do it well enough, I think you're going to go home with some Golf Box goodies. So
Okay. Do I
But,
need my glasses on?
Before we do, What's in the Golf Box is brought to you by Golf Box, Australia's greatest golf superstore. If you need it, they have it, and it gets to you fast and free. Shop online now at golfbox.com.au.
Lehmo, go for it, mate. What's
Here
in
we
the
go.
Golf Box?
All right.
I wonder what he's
Here
going
we
to get.
go.
Yeah.
Have you ever sent a text or a pic to the wrong person? Who and when?
Oh, no.
There's There's got to be a couple.
Look, not a pick because I'm too old for that sort of behaviour. When I was
We're
dick
waiting
pic-
for that day for
Yeah,
a
we're
guest.
waiting for someone to say.
Yeah. When I was dick pic age, my phone was attached to the house. You know, that's how old I am.
The old Skype.
Yeah. So
Webcams.
I had to do a fucking telegram or
To
a
draw it.
fax. to draw.
Describe
I had
it.
to trace around it and fax it.
Oh, it's so funny.
I don't think I have ever texted. I mean, I must have at some point.
If you want, you can pull out one more if you want to.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's,
go on.
Let's pull out.
But we will
another
be
one.
leaving that part in because that was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, sure. Right, what's the most awkward encounter with somebody famous?
So you name dropped a few before.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably a bit awkward with Will Ferrell.
Yes.
There. Awkward with. I mean, it'd be where I don't know who they are,
Yeah.
which
yeah.
undoubtedly would have happened at some point.
So with radio, you might have had a guest roll in and you don't know who they are.
Or have you ever been a nuffy with some of the Hawks players over the years and
You know,
got a
we
little
had,
bit too...
once, right? There was a story. Something had happened. This is when I was on SAFM Breakfast in Adelaide, right? Something had happened at Collingwood. I can't remember exactly what it was. And it involved Brodie Holland, but it must have been kind of a slightly fun story because I said to one of the producers, let's get Brodie Holland on, right? Can you find Brodie Holland for us? Anyway, producer buzzes through to the studio. I've got Brodie Holland. Amazing, right? So we come out of a song, back on air. Well, it's all happening down at Collingwood and we are going right to the source. Brodie Holland... Explain yourself, mate. Anyway, it was Brodie Holland. It was a different Brodie Holland. It was a Brodie Holland who'd been on some late night. It might have been in the Big Brother house or he hosted an up late show. You know those late quiz shows?
Yeah.
One of those shows.
How did that unfold?
So he tried to answer the first question and then we asked a follow-up question and then he had to just go, oh, sorry, guys, I think you've got the wrong Brodie Holland.
That's so funny.
I was waiting for you to say that they'd got the wrong footballer, but they couldn't even
that's
get someone from
hilarious.
No, they
Collingwood.
got Brodie Holland, just not the right
Brodie,
one.
he did a bit with... I think he did a sketch with Strawny when they were mocking the Wayne Carey stuff. Was that...
Quite probably.
Do you remember that? Yeah.
Quite probably. I had, now that you mentioned Wayne, see, I've got a terrible memory for these things. I need prompts. We did a banner before the game about Wayne Carey.
Oh, yeah, they did the
And it was
banners.
about him being a pants man or something about his missus or whatever. Anyway, so that was on the Saturday. On the Sunday, I was at the Alma Hotel in Adelaide, and this is when the Duck was playing for the Crows.
Oh, no.
And Mark Rashuda owned the Alma.
Yeah.
And I get down there, all the Crows boys are there having a drink. And I know Roo, so Roo's a mate of mine, so I'm up talking to him. And I go, anyway, I'm just going to get a beer. And I go to the bar and I'm standing next to Wayne Carey at the bar. And I've introduced the banner last night. And I'd never met him before. And I go, Duck, how are you? Lehmo. And he goes, and I'm kind of shitting myself a little bit. And he looks at me and goes, mate, that banner last night was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, that's good.
Just watching it with the missus, we pissed ourselves. And I'm like, thank God for that.
Well, thank you for that, Lehmo. Because of that, we are sending you home, or Golf Box are sending you home with a $250 Golf Box gift voucher.
Sweet.
So if you love your golf,
Yes.
or you're a casual hacker, it doesn't matter.
Straight to the driving range.
There's some great apparel on that website as well. So we'll sort you out. But we're also sending you home-
Beautiful.
Our other sponsor, Fleet Plant High, they're sending you home with a few golf goodies as well. So it's a full golf pack. So
I love it. I do enjoy a bit of golf.
glove, tees, balls. What else we got? Socks. Bit of everything.
A bit of
Towels.
everything, yeah.
We'll
I'll
send you
lose
home
them
with
all
that.
within the next 6 months.
Perfect. But, mate, thank you so much for joining us. We've been so excited for this, so we really appreciate it. How do we find you, by the way, on
Go
socials?
to Lehmo15 on
Lehmo15,
Instagram.
Yep.
And that's all I really look at.
Yep.
I've got Twitter and Facebook as well, but I haven't tweeted for ages. I've given up since Elon
the name
ruined
change, yeah.
He ruined it. He did. He ruined it. I get shit in my feed. I don't know who it is. I don't follow them.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
know.
why I get it.
The algorithms, yeah.
The algorithm's cooked.
I haven't been on Twitter for years.
And
man.
there's now, there's all sorts of shit on there that I have no interest in.
Yeah.
So I've lost interest in Twitter.
He's an Instagram man.
It's Instagram.
So go and find him on Instagram.
Lehmo 15.
I'm an Insta guy.
Insta guy.
Thanks again, Lehmo.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, team.